Time Walk with me.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Time Walk with me. Today we're going to take a look at my Locust God deck. You can probably guess the kind of things that are in this. If you know much about the Locust God, he is a legendary god creature who is a 4/4 flying. Whenever you draw a card, create a 1/1 blue and red insect creature token with flying and haste. And for 2 mana and a red and a blue, draw a card, then discard a card. So when you do that, you're drawing a card, so you'll also get to create a 1/1 blue and red insect. And when the Locust God dies, return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So that's pretty cool. So you will not be returning this to your command zone if he dies. He goes to your hand. Makes him harder to get rid of. Alright, now we're going to look at the cards in the deck. First category is going to be wheels. First wheel we have is Whirlpool Rider. It's a 1/1 merfolk. When it comes into play or enters the battlefield, shuffle the cards from your hand into your library, then draw that many cards. So if you started out with 7 cards in your hand, you're going to draw 7 cards and create 7 1/1s. We got Credit Voucher. 2 of any, tap it, sacrifice it, shuffle any number of cards from your hand into your library, then draw that many cards. So if there are any cards that you want to keep, you can opt to do that. But the more cards you decide to shuffle in, the more you will draw, and the more 1/1s you'll create. Fateful Showdown. It is an instant. Let's see. It deals damage, not combat damage, direct damage, to target creature or player equal to the number of cards in your hand. Then discard all the cards in your hand, then draw that many cards. So the more cards you have to discard, the more damage it does, and then the more 1/1 insects you make. Temporal Cascade, a very expensive version of Time Twister. Choose one. For 7 mana, you can choose one. Each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into their library, or each player draws 7 cards. And if you pay 2 more, bringing the mana cost up to 9, you can choose both. And that is pretty much what Time Twister does. Tolarian Winds. Discard your hand, then draw that many cards. An instant, 2 mana. Nice and simple. Dragon Mage, a 5/5 flying. When he deals combat damage to a player, each player discards their hand, then draws 7 cards. So this makes it a repeatable wheel effect. Always good. Midnight Clock. You can tap it for a blue, or you can pay 3 mana to put an hour counter on it, and at the beginning of each player's upkeep, you put an hour counter on it. And when the 12th hour counter is put on it, so you shuffle your hand and graveyard into your library, then draw 7 cards, exile Midnight Clock. So once you have 12 hour counters on it, it becomes a Time Twister. And then those 7 cards that you draw, become 7 1/1s. Illuminate History. Discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards. Then if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. Now the spirit creature token doesn't really matter, but the drawing of cards, of course, does. Days Undoing. This is basically the same exact thing as Time Twister, except I don't remember if Time Twister's a sorcery, and this ends your turn when you play it. So you play it after your combat step, and it can actually help you out, because if there's something that happens during your end step, you're going to skip your end step. Wheel of Fate. This is Wheel of Fortune with Suspend. Each player discards their hand and then draws 7 cards, and you suspend it for 4 for 2 mana. So your opponents will have a chance to prepare for this card, but it'll still do some damage. This next card is one of my favorite in the deck, one of my favorite wheel cards. Arjun the Shifting Flame. Now this I got in a pack, a very lucky pack. Although it's not worth a whole lot, in this deck it is. It's a 5/5 legendary Sphinx Wizard with flying. Whenever you cast a spell, put the cards in your hand on the bottom of your library in any order, then draw that many cards. So every time you cast a spell, It's Teferi's puzzle box, basically. Here we have a fake time twister. It is a sorcery. Okay, I wasn't sure before. 2 of any and a blue. You basically. I'll just read the beta text here. Set time twister aside in a new graveyard pile. Shuffle your hand, graveyard, and hand, library, and graveyard together into a new library and draw a new hand of 7 cards, leaving all cards in play where they are. Opponent must do the same. So all players shuffle their hand, graveyard, into their library and draw 7 cards. Very good card. It is the only Power 9 card that is not banned in Commander. So, of course, I had to get a proxy of it and make use of it. Teferi's Puzzle Box. At the beginning of each player's draw step, that player puts the cards in his or her hand, in their hand, I should say, on the bottom of their library in any order, then draws that many cards. And I think there is errata on this that says you draw the card for your turn first, and then you put that on bottom. Here is a fake and very badly printed Wheel of Fortune. I got this through a proxy card site, and some of them turned out really good, some of them turned out really bad. This one turned out pretty bad, but still good enough to use. Wheel of Fortune, 2 of any and a red. Both players must discard their hand and draw 7 new cards. At the time, it was a 2-player game, but now it's all players discard their hands and draw 7 cards. This next card isn't so much a wheel effect as it is a just draw lots of cards. We got Jin Gitaxias Core Augur, 5/4 legendary praetor with flash, costs 10 mana to cast, 10 whopping mana, which is a bit of a hardship in blue and red, but you know, we make do. At the beginning of your end step, draw 7 cards. Each opponent's maximum hand size is reduced by 7. So that's pretty awesome. Pretty oppressive, little stacksy. Magus of the Wheel, 3/3 for 2 mana and sacrifice him. Wheel of Fortune. Everyone discards their hand and draws 7 cards. This one's real. Didn't have to get a fake one of that. Not an expensive card, fortunately. Ruin Grinder, 7/4 with Menace. When he dies, each player may discard their hand and draw 7 cards. Now, it doesn't matter if your opponents do it, because you're going to be doing it, which is going to give you some 1/1s. And the last wheel card here, Shattered Perception. Discard all the cards in your hand, then draw that many cards. And it's got flashback, so you can play it twice. Alright, now we are in a new category. I'm not exactly sure what the category is, but we will discover it together. Murder of Crows, a 4/4 bird creature with flying for 5 mana. That alone makes it a halfway decent card. Whenever another creature dies, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So that way, if one of your insects is killed, a new one is made. It's pretty cool. Here we have Jaya Ballard. This is a legendary planeswalker. It's got 2/+1 abilities. One of them, you add 3 red mana to cast an instant or sorcery spell, which is good for these wheel cards. And the other one has you discard 3 cards, then draw that many cards. That's pretty good too. The third one is a -8, and you get an emblem which says basically your instants and sorcery spells have flashback, but not exactly flashback. You can play them for their from the graveyard, and then you have to exile them after you play them. Otherwise, you'd be able to keep on casting them over and over and over again, and that would be way too OP. Sage's Row Denizen. Whenever another blue creature enters the battlefield under your control, such as when you get a insect token, target player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. This is a nice little supplement while you're wheeling and dealing and getting little 1/1s. You are also milling your opponent. Mystic Redaction. At the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1, so that gives you a little bit of selection every turn. Whenever you discard a card, each opponent mills 2 cards. So there are lots of reasons. Even the Locust God has a discard ability that you might discard. So that's useful for that. Occult Epiphany. Draw X cards, then discard X cards. Create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying for each card type among cards discarded this way, and then you also get a 1/1 insect for every card you drew. So that's cool. Reconnaissance Mission. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. So if you attack with 10 locusts, you draw 10 cards and create 10 more locusts. Pretty good. Of One Mind. Let's see. 3 mana to draw 2 cards, and it's 1 mana to draw 2 cards if you have a human and a non-human. I think I've got humans in this deck. Let me see. Actually, I got a bird. I've got a Vidalcan wizard. I've got a planeswalker who may have been a wizard at one time. No, I don't see any humans yet, but I might have some. Doesn't really matter. 3 mana for 2 cards isn't bad. Divination. Draw 2 cards for 3 mana. Exactly. Yeah, it's Of One Mind, but without the extra. Oh, here we go. Here's a human. Gadwick the Wizened. Legendary human wizard. When it enters the battlefield, draw X cards, and subsequently create some 1/1s. Whenever you cast a blue spell, tap target non-land permanent an opponent controls. So that'll help your locusts get through. Field Research. It's a 3 mana with a kicker of 3. Draw 2 cards. If this spell was kicked, draw 3 cards instead. Good stuff. Wizard class. You have no maximum hand size at level 1. At level 2, when it becomes level 2, you draw 2 cards. So 3 mana, 2 cards. And at level 3, which costs 5 mana, whenever you draw a card, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. And that can help you beef up the Locust God, or your insects, or anything, really. Even, no, not your opponent's creatures. Just yours. Breakthrough. Draw 4 cards. Now this is a card that costs X and 1, so you could play this for just 1. Draw 4 cards, then choose X cards in your hand and discard the rest. My idea for this is to just pay the 1 and draw the 4 cards and create 4 dudes, and then go ahead and discard all the cards in my hand, and then later on I can wheel and have no drawback, no additional drawback anyway, and, you know, draw a bunch of cards, get my hand back. Muldrifter, of course. When he enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards, and he has an Evoke. And he's a 2/2 flying. Faithless Looting, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards, so 2 cards for 1 mana. Pretty good. 2 1/1 flyings for 1 mana. Even better. And with flashback, so get to do it twice for a total of 4 mana. Not bad. Brainstone. This is Brainstorm on an artifact. 2 of any, tap it, sacrifice it, draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. Then we've got Niv Mizzet the Firemind. 4/4 flying. Whenever you draw a card, Niv Mizzet the Firemind deals 1 damage to target creature or player. And tap it to draw a card, which will then activate his ability. Behold the Multiverse. Scry 2, then draw 2 cards. And it's got a Foretell. So you can cast it for just 2 if you want. Blast of Genius. Destroy target creature or player, draw 3 cards, then discard a card. Blast of Genius deals damage equal to the discarded card's converted mana cost to that creature or player. So, yeah, you get to draw 3 cards, create 3 dudes, and do some damage. For 6 mana, it's a bit much, but pretty good for late game. Winged Words. Draw 2 cards, and it costs 1 less if you control a creature with flying. So, your Locust God, your little pal here, has flying, and the tokens will also have flying. So this will most likely cost 2 mana. 2 mana for 2 cards is pretty good. Compulsive Research. Target player draws 3 cards, then that player discards 2 cards unless they discard a land card. So if you play this late in the game when you don't even need the lands anyway, then you're doing pretty well. You get some cards and some 1/1s. Sift, draw 3 cards, then discard a card. A not as good, I don't know, in some ways it's better, in some ways it's not as good as compulsive research. Next we got Niv Mizzet Parun. Parun? I don't know. 5/5, can't be countered, flying. Whenever you draw a card, he deals 1 damage to any target, and whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card, including you. So, while you are wheeling, you're drawing extra cards and doing damage. And creating 1/1s. Folio of Fancies. Players have no maximum hand size for 2 mana. Pretty good. And XX, tap it. Each player draws X cards. And 2 of any and a blue, tap it. Each opponent, not you though, just your opponents, put a number of cards equal to the number of cards in their hand from the top of their library into their graveyard. So they mill as many cards as are in their hand. Pretty good. And this is a combo with the Locust God. Sage of the Falls. 2/5. Whenever Sage of the Falls or another non-human creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. Now that may is important because it keeps you from drawing out and killing yourself. But you play this, you draw a card. That causes the Locust God to give you a 1/1 insect, which triggers this to draw you a card, which causes this to create an insect, back and forth, until you decide not to draw a card again, and then you have as many locusts as you have cards that you decide to discard. Basically milling yourself to create 1/1 flying insect tokens. Alright, now we're going to look at the ramp in this deck. First, we've got a Heraldic Banner. Not the greatest in a 2-color deck, but, you know, just make it the color you need the most at the time that you play it, and it's fine. Creatures you control of the chosen color get +1/+0, so it makes your 1/1 tokens into 2/1s, no matter what color you choose, because it's going to be either red or blue. And it taps for a mana of the chosen color. We got Talisman of Creativity. We got Is It Locket? Yes, it is Locket. We got Is It Signet? Yes, it is Signet. We got Wayfarer's Bauble. Basically, we're doing ramp with artifacts. It works. Thran Dynamo. Is It Keyrune? Letter of Acceptance. And last, but certainly not least, Ashnod's Altar. So you can sacrifice your locusts for extra mana if you need it. Alright, now we're going to look at some other category. We got Containment Construct, a very useful utility creature. It is a 2/1 artifact creature construct for just 2 mana, and whenever you discard a card, which you do quite often in this, you may exile that card from your graveyard. If you do, you may play that card this turn. That's awesome. So it's kind of like giving madness to every card in your hand. Moonsilver Key. 1 of any, tap it, sacrifice it. It's an artifact. Search your library for an artifact with a mana ability or a basic land, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. You may notice that I didn't put any Soul Rings in this deck. That is because I don't have any more. They're all in decks. Elixir of Immortality. This keeps your library from getting too thin. 2 of any, tap it. You gain 5 life, shuffle Elixir of Immortality and your graveyard into their owner's library. So this can continually put cards from your graveyard into your library because it shuffles itself. So it's good stuff. You'll never deck out. Bag of Holding. Whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard, and you can pay 2, tap it, draw a card, and then discard a card. 4 of any. Tap it, sacrifice it, return all cards exiled with Bag of Holding to their owner's hand. So that's pretty cool. So it gives you a second hand, which is good when you are wheeling and doing other silly such things that end up with an empty hand. Actually, wheeling won't give you an empty hand, but cards like Breakthrough will. So Bag of Holding is a good card to play along with Breakthrough, because that can actually give you all those cards back. Very handy. Body of Knowledge, star. Its power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards in your hand. Now that's a bummer if you wheel, because when you discard your hand, he's going to have no more power and toughness. It's just going to die. But I don't know. Maybe we'll replace it with something better. But maybe it's good in this deck. I don't know. Let me know what you think of Body of Knowledge in this deck, actually, because now I'm not quite so sure. Here's a card I do know is good in this deck. Double Vision. Whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, that is during your turn and during your opponent's turn, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for that copy. So this can double up your wheels. It can double your draw spells. It's good. Ominous Seas, of course. You're going to be drawing a lot, so this can help you get lots of 8/8s while you are wheeling and creating 1/1s. Psychosis Crawler. This one is a win condition for the deck. Star, power and toughness each equal to the number of cards in your hand, so this can actually fall prey to dying as you wheel. But whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life. So that's pretty good, potentially. Idol of Oblivion. Tap it to draw a card, but you can only do that if you created a token this turn. But you will be creating a token every turn that Locust God is out, because drawing a card gives you a token. Goblin Bombardment. This is an obvious one. Sacrifice a creature. He deals 1 damage to any target. So if you get a bunch of 1/1 insects, you sacrifice them all to your Goblin Bombardment. Bash some heads. Teferi's Ageless Insight. If you would draw a card, except for the first one you draw in each of your draw steps, draw 2 cards instead. Now this is cool. If you have, like, Teferi's Puzzle Box out, or better yet, this guy right here, you'll be drawing double the number of cards that are in your hand, and that's a pretty cool thing. Impact Tremors. This is another obvious one. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, Impact Tremors deals 1 damage to each opponent, so you can kill all your opponents at once with this, which I have done. So, and the last card of this category, Glinthorn Buccaneer. 2/4 haste. Whenever you discard a card, Glinthorn Buccaneer deals 1 damage to each opponent. So another little win con. And 1 of any and a red. Discard a card, draw a card. Activate this ability only if Glinthorn Buccaneer is attacking, but you can activate it as many times as you want, and it's good stuff. And he's got haste, so you can do it the turn it comes into play. Now we'll take a look at the lands. We've got Exotic Orchard. We've got a fake Volcanic Island. We've got a Gyre Reach Sanitarium. 2 of any, tap it. Each player draws a card, then discards a card. So 2 of any for a 1/1 flying. Here's a possibly fake Reliquary Tower, because I just don't have enough of them. And they're weirdly expensive. Temple of Epiphany. Helps mana fix you. Shivan Reef. Again, helps you mana fix. Frostboil Snarl. And Memorial to Genius. This is good because it lets you draw cards when you no longer need the land. The rest of it is islands and mountains. So there we go. That is the Locust God. That is my Locust God deck. Tell me what you think, what you really think, and I'll see you next time.